Welcome to the third lesson in organization and management. So we already had a moment of discussing about planning. We already discussed organizing. Now we proceed with staffing. Staffing, which includes the recruitment, selection, and training of people who are going to be part in that particular organization or company, in that particular group. This process of staffing aims to put the right men on the right job. If people are just blindly accepted, or if companies just accept whosoever is there without following protocol, without following the right process, they can't expect effective or efficient performances from the ones that they are putting to work on these tasks or jobs. That is why companies, big organizations, or even perhaps the ones which are not that big, find ways to do a process of recruitment, selection, and training. With a goal, of course, again, that they have put the right men on the right job. What is recruitment? Recruitment is the process of encouraging, inducing, or influencing applicants to apply for a certain vacant position. Again, part of the recruitment process is you encourage someone to apply. Meaning, you approach someone, or if you know someone, you tell the person, "Uy, why don't you try and do this? Uy, you should try this. Apply on this one. You can do this one." That's the part where you are to encourage the applicant. Then you induce, you provide influence so that the applicant eventually comes out to apply for a vacant position. So that's what happens in recruitment. Whenever there are vacancies, it is always necessary to find a person to fill those vacancies. We do not want that vacancy to be left unoccupied because it just might hamper the functioning and operation of the organization or of the business. What are the steps in recruitment? Recruitment begins with studying the different jobs in the company and writing descriptions and specifications. So it needs to determine first what are to be done in that particular position. Like what required, what re, what's the required skills in that particular position? What are the required skills in that particular position in relation to what are to be supposedly done? Perhaps if you browse for job openings online or over the internet, job descriptions or job specifications are really a prerequisite. So that if a person decides to apply, that applicant, of course, can ask him or herself whether he or she could do those things described or specified for a particular job. Again, like for instance, if Nicole browses over an online source for job opportunities, if it says there that it is required that the person should know how to drive a car, and Nicole cannot drive a car yet, it would be impractical for Nicole to immediately apply for the job. Because what's going to happen is when Nicole is going to be evaluated in as part of her application, she will not really meet that standard. It's specified that the applicant should know how to drive, but Nicole could not. That is why a job specification or description shall be written on that notice. What's the second step in the recruitment process? Requisition of new employee. That is to inform the personnel department, line supervisor, or the department head concerned that they should accomplish a formal requisition form indicating that a position should be filled up. Next, actual recruitment. So this is where you now have to look for whosoever will give out application forms for that particular job to be filled in. This is where this is a process to apply in the company in order that qualifications for present and anticipated vacancies can be evaluated with, of course, a screening and selection process. Sources of labor applicants. Where can labor or applicants be sourced out? You can take them internally or externally. An internal labor source means these are the employees that are still situated or found within the company. For instance, Nathan is our company head. Nicole is a member of the company and I'm also a member of the company. Suddenly, there is a vacancy for an assistant manager in one particular area. So Nathan will look at my records as well as Nicole's to determine who between the two of us could qualify for that job, for that position. And take note, Nicole, Nathan, and I belong to the same company. Nathan did not look at anyone outside of the company to qualify for the job. Nathan just looked at whosoever in that same company qualifies for the vacant position. That's an internal source. External source. Of course, from the name itself, external, recruitment will have to be done from the outside, from outside of the company. So this will have to require placement agencies, schools, references, advertisements to send out someone for that particular application, for that particular job position, vacant job position. After having done this comes the selection process. It is in this process where the most qualified applicant among different job seekers is gotten for that purpose. Expect that a company will have many applicants, and then one or two or three will have to be picked out to fit whatever is filled out, whatever is supposed to be filled out at that point. At this time, for sure, the two of you could not relate to this yet because you have not been done job applications, right? I think you have not experienced yet the concept of doing a job application. In my experience, I've gone through this. I've gone through a moment of recruitment. I've gone through a moment of selection. So this is very relatable to me. In the selection process, of course, the reception of applicants happens first. Applicants are being received for the purpose of having a preliminary screening to eliminate undesirable applicants. Applicants are even being interviewed to be considered or not for further interviews or examination. That's part of the reception process. Sometimes you'll be called informal to go to a particular office. An informal interview will probably take place. Like if you hear someone tell you, "Can you please describe yourself?" What do you try to envision in this company? By when the employer listens to you while answering these, they're already trying to determine if you are a desirable applicant or not. They're trying to see if you have the necessary skills from the way you say things, from the way you elaborate yourself. They're trying to determine if you could match the standards that have already been set by the company itself. So that's part of the reception process. Second, the preliminary interview. How qualified, information of the job to create goodwill. So like this is where you are going to be raised with questions like, what are your strengths? What is your asset? Because by answering these questions, they can determine the things that you can bring into the company, things that the company can benefit from you. And you have to be ready with this. Also, there are others who give flowery answers to that question. For what purpose? With the hope that by having such flowery answers, they get to have an advantage over the other applicants. But mind you, employers have already come prepared for that kind of manner, for that manner of answering. Especially that if the answer is too good to be true, it just might be regretful on the end of the applicant that when actual or practical evaluations come, it will not really be true at all. Here in IA, I've had that moment where an applicant, a teacher applied here, and then accordingly, the teacher presented himself so well in the interview. Again, the teacher presented himself so well in the interview. Ma'am Zen was the one who was holding the interview with that applicant. The applicant even introduced himself as, I'm someone with these academic records. I graduated with this Laude Award. I am a student leader in the school where I have finished college. So again, the applicant packaged himself so well. Came the time that the applicant had to do a demonstration, a demo teaching. After the demo teaching, we were all I talked to Ma'am Zen, and then we were really surprised to have been dissatisfied of the performance during the demo teaching. The demo teaching performance was really different from how he packaged or presented herself in the preliminary interview. That's such a big problem. So again, even if you try to be very flowery or appealing during the preliminary interview, there will really be a way to evaluate how true you are when it comes to your words. Step 3 in the selection process, the application form. This form will be filled out because it is really a necessity of every company to receive an application form from every applicant. The application form expresses the intent of the applicant to apply for the job. And that is also for record purposes. Then you have an employment test. This employment test could come in varying types. It could be an aptitude test. It could be a psychological test. Employment test will be handed out to also determine the theoretical background of a person as well as his readiness in working for a particular job. Step 5, final selection by immediate supervisor or department head. There is someone who will have to determine whether you'll work, you'll be accepted to work or not. And that's the department head. The head of a particular area where you're applying for. When I applied for a work in HNU, my department head was the principal of the basic education department. It's not the president, it's not the vice president for academic affairs, it's not the HR office that accepted me. Rather, it was the principal who selected me for my acceptance because he's my department head. Physical exam and the medical exam comes next. Of course, as others might find this to be unnecessary, but actually it is really necessary to go through a physical or a medical exam. We don't want an applicant to leave by the middle of the term because of health reasons. Because leaving would be a deterrent to a good performance of the entire department. Imagine, Nicole has been accepted for a job, but then sometime in the month of August, in the middle of the year, Nicole has been diagnosed of a terminal illness. Here we are. What's going to happen is Nicole will have to leave the business, and leaving the business leaves a vacancy in her job position. And that would require the company again to look for another employee in the middle of the year. To avoid that, the company has to make sure that the applicant is physically sound, physically healthy, and medically well for a particular job position. The second to the last step is the hiring step, the hiring process, where the applicant is being told that he will now be reporting for the job and that the human resource department takes charge of the continuity of the hiring process. The last one, the orientation, induction, or indoctrination. This is now where the new employees are going to be oriented to company rules, policies, and regulations. It is such a necessity to also orient these new employees because we want them to be aware of how things work in the company. We don't want them to work blindly in a company. We want them to have an idea of what they're applying for and how things work in an organization. Now that the person has been recruited, has been selected for the job, that applicant will go through some training. Training is not just even for the new applicants. Trainings are to be supposedly provided even for those that are not considered new. Even for those who are yet in the process of continually developing themselves in the company, they should go through a process of training. It's even defined by the Labor Code of the Philippines. It is a systematic development of the attitude, knowledge, behavior patterns or adequate performance of a given job or task. All employees of a new job should undergo a learning process whether or not formal training exists. So this is a requirement for new employees and also to be enjoyed by not so new employees. What are the types of trainings? You have on-the-job training and job rotation. You also have vestibule training, apprenticeship, classroom training, programming instructions, and management development program. The definitions are there. You should probably be familiar with an apprenticeship where someone works as an apprentice or someone is being placed under the guidance of a skilled worker. That's apprenticeship. Like for instance, in our case, when we were in college, we had our apprenticeship. We termed that as an in-service, no, um, practice teaching. We termed it as practice teaching, where where the skilled worker guiding us is our critique or cooperating teacher. They were the ones, a critique teacher is the one that gives us comments whether our practice teaching is done well, whether our practice teaching is in need of improvement, and so on. On the job training and job rotation, the trainee is shown how to perform the job and allowed to do it under trainer supervision. Job rotation allows flexibility in the department. Job rotation is giving everybody the chance to work at varying areas. For instance, I'm assigned in the admin department. Nicole is assigned in the finance department. Nathan is assigned in the admin, finance, and marketing department. By job rotation, Nathan will now be assigned to the finance department. I will be in the admin department, and Nicole will be in the marketing department. So we are rotating. We're giving the chance to experience other departments. That could help determine our flexibility. We are trained to be flexible, such that if we are placed in different departments, we could still work effectively and efficiently. However, take note, however, there are also others who would prefer a mode of specialization, meaning they would want to be kept in that same area or department. That's how specialization works. Because according to them, that's their field of expertise. That's where they could excel. So they would want to be kept in that particular area or department. Classroom training, the use of classroom for teaching actual material, concepts, principles, and theories. This also works. HRM students are also go through this. We even had a classroom training kind of training. Human asset accounting, what is it? Human asset accounting evaluates costs incurred by the organization in recruiting, hiring, training, and developing human assets. And this is normal. This kind of accounting is really normal for as long as you have people to hire, for as long as you have people working under you. You will really go through human asset accounting. Then there are methods in finding the financial value. The first one is by virtue of startup costs. You derive the original cost of hiring and training personnel as well as the costs of developing working relationships. You have replacement costs. Estimate cost of replacing current employees with others of equivalent talents and experiences. Present value method. You multiply the present value of the wage payment for the future 5 years. Goodwill method. It allocates a portion of the company's earnings in excess to the industry average to HR. Personnel can also be moved across an organization. How does this movement work? One may be transferred. As transferring is, as the word denotes, one is shifted from one position to another without increasing its duties, responsibilities, or pay, the salary. The transfer is just merely putting someone to another department. Like assuming Nathan. Nathan is working as the clerk, as a clerk in one particular area. Nathan will then be transferred to another area, still working as a clerk. Nathan will not change his job description. Nathan remains to be a clerk, just transferred to another area or another department. There is though a time where someone has leveled up. We term that a promotion. A promotion happens as there is a shifting of an employee to a new position to which both his status and responsibilities are increased, which also which kind of tells some employees that their salary will also be increased. But take note, a higher salary does not always accompany this, but at least will follow soon. It's not always a case where the higher salary follows right away. It may, it may come out soon, but does not happen right away all the time. For instance, in the case of Nicole, Nicole is working in a bank, and then Nicole has started working as a teller in the bank. Because she has been performing well, she has proven that she is a good teller. In years time, she has been eventually promoted to being the bank's assistant manager. That's a promotion. Her position has leveled up. But of course, by leveling it up, her responsibilities and duties also increased. If one can be transferred, if one can be promoted, an employee can also be separated from the organization. How does the separation work? There are four ways of separation. One may be laid off, one can also be discharged, the employee may be able to resign, or the employee may retire. A laying off is temporary and involuntary. Maybe because there are negative business conditions. For instance, the company has lost a building, and the building is such a big loss. So it might mean that the company will do some cost cutting of personnel, so they'll have to lay off some people. And when the company has gained in the passage of time 2 or 3 years, the company has slowly recovered, the company might want to call back those who have been laid off. That is why a layoff is temporary and involuntary. For sure, no one wants to be laid off. No one wants to lose a job. But because of such negative business condition, the employee has been temporarily and involuntarily laid off. Next, discharge. A discharge is a permanent separation of an employee at the will of the employer, meaning the employer has decided that that employee be pushed out of the company. It's the decision of the employer not to anymore renew the contract of the employee. That's a discharge. Another one, resignation. This is voluntary and permanent. Due to low morale or low salary or for some other reasons, the employee has decided to resign. This is the resignation is not by the decision of the employee. It's by the decision of the resignation is not the decision of the employer. It is by the decision of the employee. The last one is a retirement. It could be voluntary or involuntary. It's a voluntary retirement if employee retires upon reaching the number of years or service in the company. It's involuntary if the employee reached the retirement age of 65. At 65, employees are actually forced to retire. However, I had a teacher in college who at the age of 65 still chose to work. Why? According to her, she has been teaching for more than 40 years. if she is forced to retire and that she doesn't teach, she just might lose her sanity. She just might lose it. She could not live her life without teaching at least once in a day. So she requested that she be made to work in school even if she has to teach for just one subject. That was totally fine with her for as long as she could teach. Again, though she is already retired, she was forced to retire. But until now, she still continues teaching beyond the age of 65. That's now outside the will of the employer because that was really a request placed by the employee. It was by her strong desire that she be made to teach beyond the age of 65. 7 reasons why employees must be well selected. Your business goals and objectives are better achieved if you have properly selected employees. You are well assured that you have the right people who will help you achieve the goals and objectives of the business. This is what has been said at the start of the discussion. You are choosing the right persons for the right job. And in doing so, you are really giving justice to the objectives and goals of the business. Another one, an incompetent employee is a liability, correct? That incompetent employee will just be a burden, will just be an additional expense. And the company might not be able to afford such burden. And I think no company could afford that a burden remains in an organization. That is why we want to hire, we want to select the right employee. The right employee has, personal requirements vary from job to job. That's why the right employee really fits for the right job. There must be no general requirement. As we are looking for the right person for the right job, we are after of the right skill set. We are after of what they really possess and what fits them into that category of a job. Labor laws protect employees, making it difficult to fire incompetent and problematic employees. That's one thing. In the event that you have hired an incompetent employee and that they have been with you for so long, labor laws would protect them from termination. That is why from the very start, you should really be careful in selecting employees. Individuals have different interests, goals, and objectives in life, which means that you should select somebody whose goals closely align to the business goals. Meaning, look for the right people who are as directed as the organization or business that you are creating. Do not look for people who are on opposite or contrasting ideologies as the business, because surely that can't help the organization or the business in the achievement of its goals and objectives. Number 7, careless hiring is costly and it can even cause problems at the company, to the company. The hiring process itself is quite long. It's taking time. It's costly because just look at the amount of time that will have been wasted if you hired the wrong person. Plus, there are monetary finances involved. The making of the document, the preparation of documents. You can't expect the ones who are part of the hiring committee to not be paid for their job or to not be given some incentives, some snacks. All of these, though minor, constitute costs, and they have already been spent for that particular business process. That is why it pays so much to really arrive at the right set of employees that are being hired. Questions so far?
Sir, in sir,
Yes?
sir, in this discharge under separation, sir, is it the will of the employer that will kick out the employee? No,
Correct. It is at the
like
will of the
he is
employer, Nathan.
unsatisfied with the performance of the employee.
Correct.
Is it the
If the employer decides that that employee be discharged, then the discharge happens. It will have to be by the choice of the employer, Nathan. Does that answer your question?
yes, sir.
It's like this, Nathan. Even if the employee does not want to leave yet, take note, even if the employee is still willing to stay in the in the business, in the
Mm.
company, but the employer wished for the discharge, the employee will really be discharged. Of course, the employee should have good reasons in the discharge of the employee. Again, the employer should have good reasons in the discharge of the employee. Questions? Other questions?
Yes.
If there are no questions, let's try to discuss the answers for the 5 questions. There are five
Sir,
questions in the module. Yes, Nathan, you have a question?
Kwan sir, kanang under sa preliminary interview sir. If a person has only is doesn't have cum laude or summa cum laude like that, but he has only a college graduate sir, is it possibility that he might be hired like for good cause, for
The
good reason?
Laude Awards, the Latin, we term them as Latin Awards.
Mm.
The Latin Awards, Nathan, are not an assurance of being hired. They are just added points. They give additional points to you because you have special awards when you finish college. But that's not an assurance that you'll automatically be hired.
Yes.
We are still, of course, after of what skills you can bring to the table. There are people who graduated as cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude, but turned out to be only good with theories.
Mm,
But when
tourist.
it came to the application of the skills, that's where they failed. That's a possibility. It's a very big
Yes,
possibility.
sir.
So the Laude Awards, the Latin Awards
Sir.
are not
Yes,
an
sir.
assurance of employment. But they are like bonuses, additional points. They're plus points. Nathan, Nicole? Nathan, I hope that answers your question.
Sir, kung kuan ka sir, UP graduate or kuan sir, Lasal graduate sir, possibility na madawat ka
English, English.
higher. Is it possible if you are a UP college graduate or a university that you're graduated at Manila sir, is it possibility that the company will hire just because you are a UP college graduate or not?
Other organizations, businesses, or companies are influenced by that.
Because UP
That
board is hard school like
that they consider
from
the school where you are from.
mm,
To them, where you are from matters because perhaps that school has rigid training,
mm,
presumed to have rigid training compared to other
to other.
schools. However, Nathan, I'd like to also share to you, Nathan, when I
Yes, sir.
applied in IA back in 2012,
Mm.
I applied together with someone who graduated from FEU, from Far Eastern University. I saw the application letter of that person from FEU. Try to compare FEU and the school where I finished in college. I'll not name my school. Of course, you know it. Just don't name the school where I am from.
Yes, sir.
But if you are to really compare them, the school where I am from probably is far from FEU, the standards of
Yeah, yeah.
FEU. But why did I get hired? Why was I hired over that FEU applicant? I don't know. I don't really know. I would not want to speak of the actual reason. All
Is
that
it
I could
because
think,
of the
I would not want
trade
to
one
speak
date?
lagi
Ay, never mind.
because
Demonstration, I think.
I'm not the admin to speak for it. But for sure, the admin has reasons why they've chosen me over the one from FEU.
Mm, yes,
So again, there are companies or businesses who consider the school where you are from but there are probably others who do not.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other questions? Let's go with the F, with the activity. Why do organizations and companies offer promotion? Nicole,
Sir,
why do companies or organizations offer promotion?
um, organization and companies offer promotion because it helps the organization to ensure long-term success, bring in more customers, and ensure profitability.
That's more or less a general answer on how promotion works. Correct, correct. However, you can also approach the, Nathan, how did you answer the question?
This is where um, the status of the employees and the responsibilities of employees are increased.
Yeah, why? Why are they given promotions? On a
Uh,
practical note, people, promotions are provided because they motivate employees. Di ba, won't you be motivated to have, like for practically speaking, won't you be motivated to have a higher salary? You will be. How can you get a higher salary if you end up being? One way is that you end up being promoted. Though part of the promotion is an additional set of responsibilities and duties, well, at least you have something to also enjoy from it, and that's your pay, your salary. That could really motivate employees. They also offer promotions because that's their way of recognizing effort of employees. That is to acknowledge that that employee deserves this rank. Let's go to number 2. Why do organizations follow a system of rigid staffing procedures? Nathan, you're on mute, Nathan. You're on mute.
the organization follows a system of rigid staffing procedures because their business goals and objectives will be achieved better.
Correct. That's one. So that they can achieve their goals and objectives better, you should have good staffing procedures. Nicole, what's your answer?
Um, an organization must follow a systematic of rigid procedure because this will help them to really determine if the applicants are deserving to be accepted in the company.
That's also a very good reason. These rigid staffing procedures will definitely determine whether one qualifies to that job, whether that person is really the right person for that job. Why is training an important element in staffing employees, Nathan?
The training is an important element in staffing employees because the employee should be accustomed to the stand up procedures and standards and the patterns of a certain job.
So what will this do? What can training do to them? Nathan,
Um, it undergoes learning process.
yeah, and what can you're defining a training? What can training do?
It enhances the
There,
skills and capabilities of employee.
correct. There you have it. Nicole, is that more or less as well your answer? Do you have more or less the same answers,
Yes, to
Nathan?
improve,
Improve, correct.
improve their
It
performance.
improves performance, enhances performance. That's why with earlier I said training is a necessity to new employees and even to not so new employees. From time to time, they need to be improved. Let's go to number 4. What are the possible movements of the personnel in an organization? You have there a transfer, a promotion, and a separation. And separations can happen in four ways: a layoff, a discharge, a resignation, or a retirement.
Time.
Last one, the fifth one. Choose one reason on why employees need to be selected carefully and discuss it, explain it. I'd like to begin with you, Nicole.
One reason, sir?
Yeah,
Bakit?
just choose one and then discuss
One
it.
reason is, asan ako mamimili, sir?
7 reasons why employees must be well selected. Choose from there.
Ah, this one.
Yeah, and then you explain.
I thought gagawa ng sarili, sir.
Ay, wait, did you make one? It's all right, it's all right.
Your answer,
Let's go with your answer, go.
I want to say, because hiring good resource, because hiring good resource can help increase the overall performance of the organization.
Hiring.
Hiring good employees
Employees.
and resources can help increase the overall performance of the organization.
Yeah, that really works. In relation to the overall performance of the organization, you need to have the right people, the right employees. Nathan, what about you, Nathan?
Careless hiring is costly and can cause problems to our company. The hiring process costs.
Elaborate. Put it into your own words. Just don't read it.
Yes, sir. Careless hiring in the company will add unnecessary amount to the budget in the certain business, making the business to have more costs and wrong possibility that their goals will be depreciated.
I like that Nathan mentioned the word budget. Yeah, that's actually true. In the hiring process, a budget will have to be involved. There is a budget for this. Staffing requires a budget. And yes, imagine if you've hired someone who decided to leave in the middle of the year. That budget seems to have been wasted. Or that you have hired someone who was not effectively or efficiently functioning. That it's as if the budget has been also wasted. So that's really a practical approach to the question. Questions regarding staffing.
Sir,
Go, Nathan, go.
what about sa physical and medication examination?
Again, physical examination, physical medical exam.
If the person is obese, sir, does it disqualifies the qualifications of the certain jobs or in the?
It depends, Nathan, on the job you're applying for. It depends. I've not been yet through a medical exam where obesity is, per experience, I mean, I have to be honest, I'm not small. I'm honest with that. I'm not small. I'm not, I think I'm medium, sure. I'm medium size. Hala, you laughed at me, ha? Bantay mo. However, I have not gone through an employment stage where because of my weight, I have been disregarded as an applicant. But maybe, of course, there are a few. Like for instance, if you apply as an Italian model, your weight should really matter. unless someone applies as the mascot of BMEG. Remember BMEG that feeds, that one with the song Santang Bata Pa sa Kasagbutan Magino. If you apply for that commercial, if you apply for a piggery commercial, then for sure people would find you fitting for the job. Other questions, Nathan? By the way, there are not perhaps with weight, Nathan, but there may be others who are going to look for physical attributes that you don't have anything on your skin, anything wrong with your skin. Your blood pressure is normal. You don't have any background, any history of a very very terminal illness, they'll have to make sure that you pass in these areas. Okay. Other questions? Nathan is quite worried already.
Advanced
Questions?
medicine. Yes, sir.
If there are no more questions, I think that will be
Sir,
all.
sir.
Go, Nathan, go.
Sir, di ba next sem kay immersion, sir, is it related to this lesson? No.
I'm
Yeah, and the
not
training
sure. I'm not sure how immersion will work next and during the second step.
but is it a type of training, sir, as well?
It's one wrong notion that people get about immersion is that it's an OJT. It's not an OJT. The training is the OJT, man, the on the job training. OJT is different from the immersion.
Yes.
Anyway, you'll have that. We'll see what you'll do
What's the
by
difference,
the
sir?
second step. Huh?
Ano yung difference nila, sir?
In the first place, OJT stands as one subject, which runs for like a semester. Immersion is like for 10 days only. Supposedly. The curriculum is just in a matter of days. While OJT runs for several months, for a few months. Nathan, Nicole, both of you froze. Hello, Nathan, Nicole. Do you still
Yes,
have some
sir.
other questions?
Wala na po.
Mong question, Nicole, saan mo to question mo?
Nicole, has your question been answered?
Wala
The
na.
difference between an OJT and an immersion?
Sir?
Difference between OJT and immersion. Was I able to give the answer? Because your video froze earlier.
Hindi po.
It's because of the internet. The immersion runs for days. OJT runs for a few months. Because on the job training is in college is really a separate subject. While immersion in the senior high is just a matter of weeks or days. And there are things that you are supposed to do in the
Okay, sir.
OJT that you cannot anymore do in an immersion. Depending on the area where you are being immersed. So I hope that answers the question.
Opo.
So for
Yes, sir.
bye and thank you, Nathan and Nicole.
Goodbye, thank you, Darcy.
Goodbye and thank you, Sir Sim.